So you lied about being pregnant to trap me? Malia froze. Her hands trembled around the test. It was negative, but so was his heart. Knox, shirtless, cold, and louder than she'd ever seen him, laughed right in her face. This is what women like you do, grab onto power and cry victim when it suits you, and just like that. He walked out. 5 years later, she walked into his boardroom with a little boy who had his eyes. Have you ever been accused of something you didn't do? Ever had someone you loved turn around and shame you the moment you were most vulnerable? Have you ever been so disrespected you chose silence instead of begging? This is the story of a woman who was mocked, humiliated, and left to rebuild from nothing. But she didn't break. She rose, quietly, boldly, and when life brought her face to face with the same man who called her a liar, she didn't come back for revenge. She came back with proof of grace, her son. Stick around, because this isn't just a comeback story. It's a lesson in growth, dignity, and the kind of love that doesn't beg, it stands tall. And by the end, you'll see who truly lost everything that night. Welcome to Mr. Charles Stories. If you're new here, thank you for joining us. And to our returning family, thank you for staying loyal. Before we begin, please, tap the like button if you've ever had to walk away to protect your peace. Drop a comment if you've been misunderstood, but kept going anyway, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because stories like this deserve to be heard. The hotel room sat in silence, cloaked in dim, honey-tinted lighting. Malia stood barefoot on the cold marble tile, holding the pregnancy test like it was a loaded weapon. Her hands shook, her breath tight in her chest. Knox Ellington leaned against the edge of the king-sized bed, shirtless, his sculpted chest rising and falling like he'd just run a marathon. The tension wasn't romantic anymore. It was sharp now, suspicious, cold. Malia stared at the white stick in her hand, heart racing. She turned it over twice, hoping her eyes were wrong. Negative. Still, she felt sick. Her period was 10 days late. Her body didn't feel like her own. But the test didn't lie. Or did it? She looked up at Knox. I think we should talk. Before she could finish, he grabbed the test from her hand. His eyes narrowed. Then came the smirk. Negative, he said, like it confirmed some long-held theory about her. So, what's the play here, Malia? Trying to trap me? Her jaw tightened. What? You're not pregnant, and you damn well knew it, Knox snapped. So why the drama? Why the panicked texts last night? Why the trembling this morning like you're about to tell me I'm a father? Because I thought I was, Malia whispered. I was late. My body... You were late. He cut in. You make 7 figures a year managing my marketing department, and didn't think to double-check before scaring the hell out of me. His words sliced deep, but it was his tone, sarcastic, scornful, that gutted her. She looked down, ashamed, though she didn't owe him shame. I didn't want to lie to you, she said softly. You didn't lie. Yet, Knox snapped. But it's what women like you do. Find a man with something to lose, then wait for the right moment to cry baby and secure a check for 18 years. Malia blinked slowly, processing his words. Women like me? He didn't flinch. She laughed once, not from amusement but disbelief. You mean the woman who stood by you when your entire board turned on you last year? When they tried to push you out of the company you built, who was the one briefing media day and night? Writing speeches you couldn't face the cameras to say yourself? Knox stared, arms crossed. I sat beside your mother while she was hooked up to oxygen, Malia continued, voice trembling. Held your hand in hospital lobbies. You were in pieces, Knox, and I never once walked away. And now you want credit because you thought you were pregnant? He shot back. I never wanted credit. I just didn't want to be accused of something I didn't do. You sure about that? He said, voice full of ice. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you wanted a promotion from girlfriend to lifetime beneficiary. Silence. Thick. Suffocating. Malia felt her chest rise and fall in waves. She could feel heat gathering behind her eyes, but she blinked it away. She wouldn't give him that. He grabbed his suit jacket off the chair. "I'm done, Malia. This little performance, over." She stared at him as he straightened his collar, fixed his watch, and picked up his phone like none of what just happened mattered. "So, that's it?" she asked. He looked at her, almost annoyed. "Yeah, that's it." She didn't move, didn't breathe. And then, without another word, he left. The door clicked shut like the final nail in a coffin. The room remained still, so still it hurt. Malia stood in the silence, still holding the test, though it had already fallen to the floor. Her hand trembled against her stomach. Her voice echoed only inside her head. "This man just accused me of trapping him. Like I'm some groupie he met at a party. After 2 years." She didn't scream, didn't fall to the floor in some dramatic heap. She just stood, numb, as the shock settled deep in her bones. They had built something, or so she thought. She'd been with him when the IPO almost collapsed, when investors got skittish, when rumors about Knox's temper made headlines. And now, she was just another woman like you to him. 15 minutes passed before Malia finally moved. She bent down, picked up the test, wrapped it in tissue, and dropped it into the trash can. It didn't even feel real. The room still smelled like sex and expensive aftershave. She pulled her cardigan over her shoulders and sat at the foot of the bed. The sheets were still messy from the night before. Her hair still smelled like his cologne. She wanted to cry, but she couldn't. Not yet. Instead, she picked up her phone. 5 missed calls from Naya, her best friend, a few texts asking if she'd confirmed the pregnancy yet. She didn't respond. Instead, she opened her calendar. She had a meeting in the morning, a strategy deck due by noon. Her brain moved forward, but her heart was stuck in that moment, when he didn't even let her speak. She checked the time. It was nearly midnight. Tomorrow, she'd leave. Malia barely slept. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the fight in her mind like a film she didn't want to watch. She remembered how Knox used to whisper to her when they were tangled in sheets. He'd call her his calm, his anchor, his only constant. Apparently, all it took was one negative test to turn her into a stranger. She checked her temperature in the morning. 99.3. Her body still felt off, but she didn't bother retesting. Not now. She packed quickly. The hotel was one of Knox's private residences, but she'd been there so often it felt like their place. Now, it felt like a crime scene. By 8 a.m., she had folded every article of clothing and stacked her heels neatly in the duffel bag. She left the keys on the granite counter, along with the passcode to the security system. He'd never remember it himself. She wrote no note. She owed him nothing. With one last glance at the room, she stepped out the door, caught the elevator, and disappeared. Into a city full of noise that somehow still felt quieter than the silence he left her in. The air outside was colder than she expected. New York mornings had a bite in March, and today was no different. She pulled her coat tighter as she flagged down a cab. She stared out the window as skyscrapers rushed past. Knox would be at a morning pitch meeting now, probably laughing, probably acting like nothing happened. And maybe, for him, nothing had. But for her, something had cracked open. Something that wouldn't close again. As the cab pulled into her apartment complex in Soho, Malia checked her phone again. No messages from Knox, no apology, no follow-up. Of course not. She turned off her phone. She needed to disappear for a while. She had to breathe. She had to figure out if she was really as empty as that test said, or if something deeper was already growing inside her. The moment Malia reached her apartment, she dropped the duffel bag on the floor and leaned against the door, exhaling a breath she didn't know she'd been holding for hours. No tears came, not yet, just stillness. The building was quiet. The soft buzz of a neighbor's TV leaked through the walls. Somewhere upstairs, a faucet dripped rhythmically, but inside her apartment, the only sound was her breath. She kicked off her boots, walked into her kitchen, and poured a glass of water. Her hands trembled as she held it, lips dry, but she barely drank. The night kept replaying in her mind. His face, his voice, that cruel smirk, the way he looked at her like she was no different from women who only knew him through headlines. She paced the floor, waiting for the breakdown. But none came, only numbness. She sat down at the small table by the window. Sunlight spilled through the curtains. The city below moved on. Taxis, coffee carts, people rushing to meetings. Nobody knew what happened last night. Nobody cared, not even him. The text never came. By noon, she opened her laptop. Email flooded her inbox, project timelines, creative edits, vendor invoices. She forced herself to respond, drafting cold, professional replies as if nothing in her personal life had cracked her open the night before. Her phone buzzed again. "Naya, I'm coming over." "Don't argue." 10 minutes later, Naya walked in with almond croissants, orange juice, and a face full of worry. She wore her curls in a tight puff, gold hoops, and an oversized cardigan that smelled like lavender. "You didn't call," she said, setting the food down. "What happened?" Malia didn't answer right away. She stared at the croissant like it was a foreign object. Then, quietly, "He thought I was lying." Naya froze. "Wait. What?" "I showed him the test. It was negative," Malia said slowly. "I told him I thought I was pregnant, but I wasn't, and he flipped, said I was trying to trap him, like I made it up." Naya's jaw dropped. "Are you serious? You've been with this man for 2 years. You practically ran his PR campaign through 2 scandals. You were there when his mom was in hospice, and this is what he says to you?" Malia nodded. Naya sat down, furious. "I knew he had trust issues, but I didn't think he'd turn them on you. That's wild." "No, that's disrespectful." Malia's silence was her only agreement. "I thought he loved me," Malia finally whispered. Naya's face softened. "I know. He said I was like those women, like I wanted his money. I haven't asked that man for $1 in my life." Naya shook her head. "Some men are so used to being targets, they shoot first, even at the ones protecting them." They sat for a while in quiet. Naya held her hand. Malia stared out the window, watching the skyline blur. After a moment, Naya said gently, "Do you want to go back?" "No." "Are you sure?" Malia's voice was steady. "I'm done." That word echoed in her head, like a decision made long before her heart was ready to catch up. Later that day, she logged out of her company accounts. She didn't even wait to be fired or reassigned. She sent a resignation email to HR and copied the executive assistant. No explanation. Just, effective immediately. By evening, her office badge was dropped in a return envelope. She closed the door on that chapter before they could close it on her. Naya stayed the night, sensing Malia needed quiet company more than advice. They didn't speak much. Malia barely slept. Over the next few days, Malia avoided social media, the news, even Netflix. Everything reminded her of him. His voice, his laugh, his scent on her pillow that hadn't faded yet. But Knox? Not a word, not a call, not even a half-hearted apology text. She wondered if he was even thinking about her, or if, like he always did in times of stress, he buried himself in work and pretended the emotional side of life didn't exist. But she couldn't pretend. By the 3rd day, Malia visited her aunt in Baltimore. Her mother had passed when she was in college, and her father had never been in the picture. Aunt Dolores had become her compass. Tough love wrapped in warm cornbread and too many questions. She needed warmth, so she packed light, booked a train ticket, and made the quiet ride south. Dolores opened the door in her church robe, eyes scanning Malia's face. "Something's off. Come inside." Malia didn't resist. That night, she sat at the kitchen table, eating greens and baked fish. Dolores sat across from her, sipping sweet tea. "You got that faraway look," Dolores said. "I'm tired." "From working or from being heartbroken?" Malia looked up. Dolores raised an eyebrow. "Told you that man wasn't as secure as his money made him seem." Big talk, quick to shut people out. Malia wanted to argue, but the words didn't come. Dolores shook her head. "I know love hurts, but you're not disposable. Don't let anyone, especially a rich boy with trust issues, make you feel like you're the mistake. Malia nodded slowly. But I do feel like the mistake, she admitted. Like I should have known better. Stop that. You loved. You were loyal. He messed up. Let him carry that. That night, Malia slept in her childhood room. The floral sheets were old and the mattress dipped in the middle, but she slept deeper than she had in weeks. For the first time, she didn't dream about Knox. She dreamed about peace. The next morning, she got up early and helped Dolores water her plants on the porch. The sun warmed her cheeks. Birds chirped. It was a small thing, but for Malia, it felt like breathing for the first time in a long while. After breakfast, she took a shower. While drying off, she felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. She steadied herself against the sink. Her skin felt hot. Her heart raced. She sat down, breathing slowly. Her aunt called from the kitchen. "You good?" "Yeah," Malia called back, though her body said otherwise. She looked at her reflection. There were bags under her eyes. Her skin was a little paler than usual. Her appetite had been off all week, but she chalked it up to heartbreak. Still, the thought crept in. What if I tested too early? She shook her head. The test was negative. Still, she made a mental note to pick up another one later. Just to be sure, Malia rose early the next morning, her body feeling heavier than usual. She moved slowly, brushing her teeth and avoiding her own eyes in the mirror. Her aunt was already up, humming to gospel music in the kitchen, frying plantains, and eggs with extra pepper, just how Malia used to like them as a teen. She walked into the kitchen, still in her robe. "Morning?" Dolores turned around. You look flushed, baby. Still tired?" Malia nodded and poured herself a glass of water. Her stomach growled, but her appetite was somewhere far away. "You sure you ain't catching something?" Dolores asked, setting the hot pan down. "Could be. Or maybe it's just stress," Malia replied, easing into a chair. Dolores brought over a plate and eyed her. "You still thinking about that fool in New York?" Malia didn't answer right away. Her fork moved the food around her plate. "I'm trying not to," she whispered. Dolores nodded knowingly. "Ain't easy. But peace is a muscle. You keep showing up to it every day, even when it don't feel natural." Later that afternoon, Malia stood in the pharmacy aisle of a small Baltimore drugstore, staring at a row of pregnancy tests. She didn't want to be here. Not again. But her body had been off for weeks. The dizziness, the random hunger at night, the mood swings, the missed period. Her fingers hovered over the box. The same brand as before. Negative, she reminded herself. We already know how this ends. Still, she picked one up. Back at her aunt's house, she locked the bathroom door and sat on the edge of the tub. Her fingers trembled as she unwrapped the test. She wasn't scared this time. She was exhausted. Minutes ticked by like hours. When she finally looked down, her heart slammed against her ribs. 2 lines. Clear. Positive. Malia's breath caught in her throat. Her whole body went still. This wasn't a maybe. This wasn't a mistake. She was pregnant. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just sat there, stunned, the test still resting on the sink, as if the truth hadn't quite reached her bones yet. The room felt warm. The mirror fogged a little from the heat of the running shower. But Malia was frozen. The timing didn't lie. She had taken the last test too early. Her cycle had always been irregular, but now there was no denying it. Her body had known before her heart did. She pressed a hand to her lower belly. Her voice cracked, barely audible. "It's real," Dolores knocked gently. "Everything okay in there?" Malia snapped back to the present. She flushed the toilet, rinsed her face, and opened the door slowly. Her aunt took one look at her and raised an eyebrow. "Well?" Malia nodded once. "It's positive." Dolores didn't gasp. She didn't dramatize it. She simply stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her. Malia leaned into the hug, pressing her face against her aunt's shoulder. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know." Dolores said. But you're not broken. You're just beginning. That night, Malia sat on the back porch with a blanket draped over her lap. The stars blinked faintly in the Baltimore sky, and the crickets sang like they had no cares in the world. Her mind was anything but quiet. She pulled her phone from her sweater pocket. Knox's name still sat at the top of her recent calls. She hadn't deleted it. She hovered over it, thumb twitching. She imagined the conversation. I'm pregnant. Yes, for real this time. No, I'm not trying to trap you. He'd probably think she was lying again. Maybe demand a test, or worse, accuse her of sleeping around. Her pride flared. She locked her phone and slid it back into her pocket. She wouldn't give him another opportunity to wound her. Not while she was carrying something this sacred. She'd figure this out on her own. 2 days later, Malia returned to New York. But not to the same apartment. She sublet her lease to a friend and moved into a smaller unit closer to the university. She applied to resume her master's program in occupational therapy. She got accepted within weeks. At night, she worked at a 24-hour diner, bussing tables in a white polo and rubber-soled shoes. During the day, she studied fetal development while her own body became living proof. By her second trimester, she was balancing textbooks, prenatal vitamins, and backaches while serving hash browns to tired truck drivers. No one knew who she used to be. No one recognized her as the former communications lead behind Ellington Tech's most successful media campaigns. And she didn't offer the information. In her 4th month, she visited a free clinic in Brooklyn for an ultrasound. The technician smiled warmly as she turned the screen toward Malia. There's your baby. The tiny flicker of a heartbeat filled the room. Malia covered her mouth. Her child. Alive. Growing. Real. Tears slid down her cheeks, quiet and slow. She wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't lonely either. She was responsible. And she was ready. Back at her new apartment, she taped the sonogram to the refrigerator. Every time she passed it, she whispered, "I've got you." And somehow, those 3 words kept her going. One night, while folding clothes, she pulled out an old hoodie from the bottom of her laundry bag. It was Knox's, a dark grey hoodie with a frayed hem and a smell that hadn't faded in months. She held it in her hands for a long time, then folded it neatly and placed it in a bin labelled Past. By the end of the year, Malia had completed 1 semester and earned a scholarship for academic excellence. She worked evenings and weekends and barely had time to think about the past. Her body changed daily. Stretch marks, sore ankles, sleepless nights. But her heart kept growing too. She no longer feared the unknown. She was becoming something new, a mother. The silence became routine. No one asked her about Knox. He'd disappeared from her world like smoke. Malia didn't stalk his social media. She didn't search his name on Bloomberg. She didn't linger over old photos. She let him vanish, because she knew this time, if she looked back, she might break. So she moved forward, 1 quiet step at a time. Winter turned to spring. The city bloomed again, and so did she. Her belly grew. Her strength multiplied. Her feet swelled, her lower back screamed, but her focus never wavered. She studied between contractions. She earned top grades while sipping broth from foam cups during breaks. She took notes with swollen fingers, and sometimes the only seat she could find on a packed subway was the floor. Still, she didn't quit. She didn't fold. At night, she talked to her unborn son like he was already here. "You're not a mistake," she'd whisper, lying flat on the couch with a hand on her belly. "You're my new beginning." He'd kick, soft at first, then stronger. That was their thing. She'd talk. He'd answer with a kick. It was enough. By month 8, her body slowed down, but her will didn't. Her professors, sensing her exhaustion, offered extensions. She refused them. She said, "I've got work to do, and a child watching me from the inside." She said it with a smile, but inside, the pressure mounted. She was broke. Rent was behind. Her feet were raw from standing 12-hour shifts. She barely had a crib or car seat. But when her classmates threw her a surprise baby shower in a basement classroom, with second-hand diapers and cupcakes made from box mix, she cried for the first time in months. Not because she was pitied, but because she was seen. The night she went into labor, she was alone. She had just returned from her shift, still in her uniform, when her water broke. She clutched the counter, breathing through it, heart racing. She called Dolores, who got on the next train to New York, but Malia didn't wait. She called an Uber and rode to the hospital in silence, pressing her lips together through each contraction. At 5:41 a.m., on a cold Tuesday in April, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. 6 pounds, 9 ounces, 10 fingers, a head full of soft curls, and eyes, deep, dark, sharp, that looked nothing like hers. The nurse placed him in her arms. Malia blinked back tears, breath caught in her chest. "Keon," she whispered. "That's your name." He blinked once, then yawned like he was already tired of this world. She laughed through her tears. "You've been kicking me for months. Now it's my turn to hold you." And she did. She didn't let go for hours. When the birth certificate paperwork came, she filled everything out, except the father's name. The nurse looked at her. "You want to leave it blank?" Malia nodded. "Yeah, I'm good. No questions asked. No father listed." Her aunt arrived later that day and held Keon like he was her own grandchild. She kissed Malia's forehead and said, "You did it." Malia didn't answer. She just looked at her son and whispered again, "I've got you." Keon came home wrapped in a donated blanket. Malia's apartment was small, barely more than a studio. The crib was squeezed next to her bed. Diapers were stacked in milk crates. Her kitchen had more bottles than mugs. But the space was sacred. Every wall, every drawer, every cracked tile held a piece of her comeback. She fed him while reading textbooks. She burped him while studying for finals. When he cried at 3 a.m., she sang old songs from her childhood, even off-key, because he didn't care. And when he finally slept in her arms, she'd whisper, "You're mine, and we're okay." Knox never called, never texted, never emailed. She wondered sometimes if he ever thought about her, or if the night he humiliated her was buried under a pile of meetings and mergers. But every time she felt tempted to check, to reach out, to give him that one chance. She looked at her son and remembered how easily Knox discarded her, and she stayed silent. A year passed. Keon's hair grew into soft, dark coils. He crawled, then walked. He loved puzzles, spent hours rearranging shapes and colors with the kind of focused determination that reminded Malia too much of someone she once knew. His laugh was hers, but his eyes, his stare, Knox, she couldn't deny it. Not to herself, not anymore. By Keon's second birthday, Malia had completed her degree. She walked the stage in a simple dress and a bright smile, while her son clapped wildly in the audience, seated in Dolores's lap. No man escorted her. No balloons followed her home. But that night, she lit a single candle in their kitchen, sat Keon on the counter, and whispered, "You made me strong. You saved me from loving the wrong man twice." He reached for her cheek and giggled. That was her gift. That was enough. 3 years passed like a breath held too long. Keon was now 4 years old, smart, quiet, focused. He didn't speak as much as other kids his age, but when he did, his words were clear, precise, and always thoughtful. He had the kind of gaze that held weight, like he saw more than he let on. Malia used to say, "You've been here before, little man," every time he picked up on something without her saying a word. He still had his father's eyes. Same shape, same intensity, but his heart, that belonged to her. By this point, Malia wasn't just surviving. She was thriving. She had opened a pediatric wellness center in Baltimore. It started as a part-time community clinic after graduation, 2 borrowed rooms in a local community center. She worked with therapists, speech pathologists, and volunteers, many of them former classmates who admired her grit. She named it Keon Wellness House. By year 2, she had earned a city grant to expand the clinic into a full-service facility. Her program had one goal: serve underrepresented kids with neurodevelopmental conditions without making their parents go broke. Every wall was painted with color. Every waiting room had puzzles and picture books. Every child was greeted by name. Word spread fast. By year 3, Keon Wellness House was being whispered about in hospital. Conference rooms and pediatrician circles all over Maryland. Malia never craved fame, but she wanted to build something that lived beyond her name. One Tuesday morning, while juggling back-to-back client sessions, Malia stepped into her office and finally checked her email. A message had come in from a New York-based investment group called Vertex Hive Capital. She skimmed it. "We are deeply impressed by your innovative approach to early developmental wellness. We'd love to schedule a meeting to discuss potential funding and franchising partnerships for scaling your model nationwide." Malia blinked. Her mind raced. She reread the email 3 times before forwarding it to her assistant. "Schedule it," she typed. "Next week. Zoom is fine." She didn't know the name of the firm, and she didn't care. She was too focused on making sure her waiting list didn't stretch past the 6-month mark. That weekend, she took Keon to a children's museum. He spent 20 minutes with a magnetic tile wall, building a perfect city skyline. When Malia leaned down and said, "That looks amazing," he just smiled, then pointed to a small structure in the middle. "That's our house," he said. Malia teared up instantly. "Why that one?" "Because it's close to the park and far from the noise," he said. That was Keon, always precise. She hugged him tight and whispered, "You're going to change the world." 3 days later, she joined the scheduled Zoom call with the investment group. 4 faces appeared on the screen: suits, smiles, money talk. But one face stood out. His video was off. His name tag read, K. Ellington. Her stomach dropped. She kept her own expression steady. They talked funding, brand scaling, franchising strategy. Malia answered with confidence. Numbers, metrics, growth potential. She played her part like a pro, but inside, her hands were cold. Knox was behind this. Whether intentional or not, her work had reached him. After the call ended, she sat in her chair, heart pounding. She hadn't said his name in 4 years. She hadn't seen his face. Now here he was, still lurking behind billion-dollar portfolios, hiding behind executives who delivered messages for him. She leaned back in her chair and whispered, "Of course it would come full circle." But she didn't flinch. She didn't pause her plans. She kept moving. The following week, the same group invited her to their Manhattan headquarters for a private strategy presentation. She accepted. She didn't ask questions. She already knew what was coming. This wasn't business. This was the moment life would put her back in front of the man who broke her, so she could show him what she built from the pieces. She chose a cream-colored dress. No logos, no flashy heels, just quiet confidence. She pinned her curls into a soft knot at the nape of her neck and wore a simple gold pendant. Keon, now 4.5, wore a tiny navy blazer and tan dress shoes. "Do I look nice?" he asked. Malia kissed his forehead. "You look like excellence." They took the train to New York. As it pulled into the station, Malia's chest tightened. Not from fear, from finality. She wasn't here to confront Knox. She was here to close a circle. When she stepped into the lobby of Vertex Hive's glass-walled tower, all eyes turned. She walked with grace. No hesitation, no makeup hiding the past. Just a mother, a founder, and a woman who had nothing to prove, but everything to protect. Keon clutched her hand as they rode the elevator up. He looked up at her. "Where are we going?" She smiled gently. Somewhere familiar. When the boardroom doors opened, the room fell into a hush. There he was, Knox, seated at the head of the table, clean-shaven, navy suit, slightly older, still sharp. But his eyes weren't cold this time. They were stuck on her, and stuck on the little boy beside her who looked far too much like him. Malia stood tall. She didn't blink. She didn't stumble. Instead, she extended a hand and said in a voice as calm as stone, "Mr. Ellington, I believe we've met." The The boardroom was thick with quiet tension. The senior partners of Vertex Hive sat stiff, papers open but eyes elsewhere. Every one of them glanced between Malia and the man seated at the end of the table, Knox Ellington. He hadn't spoken a word since she walked in. Malia stood tall at the head of the room. Keon sat beside her, colouring quietly with the markers she always kept in her bag. He didn't know the weight of the moment, but his presence made it heavier for everyone else. Especially Knox. He was pale, silent, and visibly off-centre. He stared at the boy. Those curls, those eyes, that chin, and then back at Malia. His throat moved, but no words followed. She didn't help him. She didn't flinch either. "Shall we begin?" Malia asked, scanning the table. One of the junior partners cleared his throat. "Yes, please, Ms. Rowe. We're eager to hear your expansion strategy." Malia opened her folder and pulled out a short proposal. Her voice was even, steady, professional. Keon Wellness House has grown 300% over the past 18 months. Through 2 core strategies, local community trust and culturally informed care. We're not a pop-up solution, we're a movement, a living space where underserved families bring their children and leave with hope. The room listened, except Knox. He didn't blink. Malia ignored him. "Each location I envision would be run by licensed therapists who've trained through our Baltimore model. And I have strict non-negotiables. We're not here to be absorbed. We're here to grow." One of the partners nodded. "We respect that." Her confidence was unshakable. She had earned it. After 20 minutes of presentation and discussion, Malia gathered her notes and stood tall again. "If this deal is about buying me out or cutting corners, say so now. I didn't build a business on pity. I built it on purpose." The junior partner smiled nervously. "No, Ms. Rowe. We're aligned. We'll follow your terms and review the next steps with our legal team." "Perfect," she said, zipping her folder shut. She turned to Keon and helped him back into his coat. He was still humming to himself, still unaware of the emotional storm brewing 3 feet away. As she made her way to the door, Knox finally stood. "Malia." She turned, slow and controlled. His voice cracked. "Wait." The entire room froze. Even the interns in the corner looked up. Malia kept her hand on Keon's shoulder. "We've said all we need to in this meeting." He took a step forward. "Just give me 5 minutes." Malia tilted her head slightly. "To talk business or something else?" Knox hesitated. "I think we should talk," he said quietly, more to her than to the room. Malia looked at her son, then back at him. "Then find me outside your boardroom, where human things are spoken." And with that, she left. In the elevator, Keon looked up. "Mama, who was that man?" Malia fixed her gaze forward. "Someone I used to know. Did you not like him?" "I liked him too much once," she said. Keon stared at the elevator buttons. He looked at me weird. Malia forced a soft smile. He was just surprised. Did he know me? Malia paused before answering. Not yet. In the lobby, she stepped into the street like she hadn't just upended a man's entire world. She didn't rush. She didn't cry. She simply held her son's hand and hailed a cab. Knox Ellington didn't move for a full minute after the boardroom door closed. The room stayed still, no one daring to speak. Finally, one of the partners coughed, collected the papers in front of him, and muttered, "We'll, circle back on the numbers next week." Everyone else took the cue and filed out quickly. Except Knox. He remained. The glass walls reflected him, his suit, his silence, his shadow. But something deeper had shifted. Something quiet and cruel that had been buried for years was now clawing its way up. He sat slowly, elbows on the table, both hands on his face. That boy. He looked just like him. By the time Knox returned to his office, his assistant had already cancelled his afternoon meetings without being told. She knew. His face had said enough. He closed the door, loosened his tie, and sank into the leather chair behind his desk. He stared at nothing. Just a blank space where clarity should have been. The boy couldn't be more than 4. And if the math added up, if Malia had been pregnant back then, He stood suddenly and paced the room. His mind tried to rationalize. She could have lied. She could have slept with someone else after. But those eyes… Knox gripped the edge of his desk. He wasn't a fool. He had mocked her once, but even now he couldn't lie to himself. Keon was his. He'd walked away from her that night, called her a liar, threw accusations at a woman who had done nothing but stand beside him through his worst storms. And now, the storm had returned. Inside him, he opened his drawer, pulled out his old phone, and tapped through saved messages. He had never deleted her texts. Not really. "Malia, I'm scared. I just want to talk. Malia, please let me explain. Malia, Knox, this isn't a game. I'm shaking." He'd read them back then. He remembered. But he never replied. Not once. He'd gone to dinner that night, told himself she was like every other woman who saw his bank account before his character. Except she never had. She never wanted anything but honesty, and he gave her pride. Cruel pride. Knox sat back down and buried his face in his hands. He felt the weight now, not just of a missed opportunity, but of a missed life. He missed his son's first laugh, his first step, his first word. The thought of it ripped at him like knives. He had built an empire, and in doing so left his only legacy out of the will, out of the picture entirely. He picked up his phone and called a name he hadn't dialed in years. "Hello?" "Naya," he said, voice low. "It's Knox." Silence. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from." "You're not wrong. I saw her today. And I saw him." "I know," Naya said coldly. "You saw what you didn't believe back then. So now what?" "I don't know," Knox admitted. "I don't even know where to start." Naya exhaled slowly. "You want my advice?" "Yes. You don't start with an apology. You start with action. You show up quietly and you stay consistent. No pity letters, no billionaire tantrums. Just show up." Knox nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "Thank you. I'm not doing it for you." "I know." Naya hung up, and Knox sat in silence. For the first time in years, the man who had everything realized how much he had lost. Malia sat by the window of her hotel suite overlooking Manhattan. Keon was fast asleep on the couch, one sock off, his hand curled beneath his cheek, like he had nothing in the world to worry about. He didn't. She made sure of that. But her own thoughts refused to rest. She hadn't seen Knox in nearly 5 years, yet the moment she looked in his eyes today, her body remembered. The sting, the night, the shame, but not the longing. She didn't miss him. She had mourned that man already, cried him out during 2 a.m., feedings and long nights balancing medical textbooks and bottle warmers. What Knox didn't know was that the version of her he remembered no longer existed. The soft-spoken girlfriend who used to shrink in his shadows, gone. The woman sitting by this window had carried a child alone, launched a business with no CO signer, and paid off her student debt while buying second-hand baby clothes. She had built something while he went on building himself. He had once told her she was too emotional to lead. She remembered that insult more clearly than the first time he called her beautiful. He said it in passing, in the middle of a disagreement over a company rebrand. "You're letting feelings cloud the pitch." He didn't know then that feelings were her superpower. Empathy made her clinic thrive. Compassion got parents to trust her with their children. And instinct? That's what told her not to chase a man who mocked her pain. She stood and walked to the nightstand where Keon's sketchpad sat. Flipping through the pages, she paused at a drawing he made last week. It was a stick-figure family, a woman and a boy, and off to the side, a small circle drawn in pencil. "I think that's you," he had said. "Before I met you." It confused her at first. Then she realized Keon didn't just think deeply. He imagined the before. He sensed something missing, even if she never told him. Malia tucked the sketchpad away. She didn't owe Knox anything, not answers, not time, not forgiveness. But she did owe Keon one thing, truth. One day, He would ask, maybe not today, maybe not next year. But one day, he'd look at her and ask, why wasn't he there? And she had to give him a reason that didn't sound like bitterness. She pulled her laptop from her bag and opened the expansion plan for Keon Wellness House. The numbers were strong, the proposal was solid, and the buzz was growing louder. But the boardroom meeting proved something even more powerful than numbers. Her presence shifted the room. She didn't need to beg for Knox's respect. He felt it the second she walked in. She thought about his eyes when he saw Keon. There was no denying what was in them. Recognition, shame, maybe even fear. But she didn't care about that. She wasn't here for redemption. She was here for legacy. And her legacy didn't start with Knox. It started with Keon. Outside, the city pulsed with light. Inside, Malia curled next to her son and whispered, "We're still on track." Because nothing had changed. Not her mission, not her pace, not her worth. "Dear Keon, you don't know me, but I saw you today. You were sitting beside your mother, legs swinging, head bent over paper like the world didn't exist outside your drawing. But when you looked up at me, I saw myself. No one had to say it. No test, no chart. I knew. You are my son, and I wasn't there. I missed your first word, your first fever, your first scraped knee. I wasn't there when you needed your nightlight on, or when you reached for your mother's hand in a dark room. And I can't explain away my absence without sounding weak. So I won't. I'll just say this. I failed you, and I failed the woman who carried you. I mocked her the night she needed me most. I used the word trap like she hadn't spent years helping me survive scandals, lawsuits, and grief. I was arrogant, cold, proud, and because of that, I lost 5 years of your life. I know I don't deserve a place in your world just because I share your DNA. I won't pretend that money erases absence, but I want to be better. For you, not to fix the past, but to show up for the future. You don't owe me anything, not a hug, not forgiveness, but I hope one day you'll look me in the eye and say my name, not out of confusion, but out of choice. And if that day never comes, I'll still be trying. Your father, Knox. Knox stared at the letter, chest rising slowly. He didn't cry. He rarely did. But something in him loosened. He folded the letter neatly, slid it into an envelope, and wrote Keon across the front. Then he opened his desk drawer and placed it inside. He didn't mail it, not yet. He wasn't ready to speak to the boy. He wasn't sure the boy wanted to hear, but he had to start somewhere. And sometimes starting silently was better than not starting at all. That night, Knox skipped the industry gala he was supposed to headline. Instead, he watched videos of the Keon Wellness House on his phone. Children laughing, therapists coaching, parents hugging Malia after sessions. She looked so at home in her purpose. He saw her smile in those videos, not the one she gave the boardroom, but the one he used to wake up to. Soft, unfiltered, earned. He wondered how many times she'd cried while holding their son. How many moments of joy she endured alone. How many nights she sat on the floor of their old apartment, building a life from nothing but strength and silence. He leaned back in his chair, hand over his face. He couldn't undo the damage. But maybe, if he moved right, said less, did more, he could earn a second chance. Not with Malia. With the boy who didn't ask to be born into this kind of history. The boy who already had a home. Knox didn't want to disrupt that. He just wanted to be let in, even if it meant sitting quietly in the back row of his son's life, until his name was finally called. The message came quietly. No grand gesture, no voicemail, no surprise at her clinic. Just an email. Subject, 5 minutes, if you'll allow it. From Knox Ellington Body, Malia, I don't want to disrupt your life. I just want to acknowledge the one I missed. I'll be in Baltimore next week. You choose the place. If not for me, then maybe for Keon. When and if you're ready. No pressure, no expectations. She stared at the screen for a long time, then closed the laptop. She didn't respond. Not right away. Days passed. The clinic was busy. Keon, was thriving. Life moved on. But that message echoed in her head, not the request. The tone. It wasn't arrogant. It wasn't pleading. It was human. Still, she didn't trust it. Not yet. She had raised her son on her own. She had worked overtime, built a name, paid her dues. Knox hadn't earned a reunion just because his conscience finally woke up. She spoke with Dolores on the phone that night. "Baby, if he's reaching out, make him do it on your schedule. I don't want him confusing effort with entitlement," Malia said. "Then make it clear," her aunt replied. "You hold the pen now." Malia waited 3 days, then replied with a time and location. Saturday, 2 p.m. Public cafe. Outdoor seating only. No emotional trap. No dinner invitations. If he wanted to meet, it would be where children screamed and strangers stared. Where there were no walls to hide behind. Saturday came. Keon stayed with Naya. Malia wore jeans, flats, and a soft brown sweater. No makeup. No performance. She didn't want to look like she was trying. She arrived 10 minutes early and ordered tea. When Knox showed up, he didn't wear a suit. Just a navy jacket, dark jeans, and the face of a man who had aged beneath his own silence. He approached slowly. "Malia." She nodded. "Sit." No hug. No handshake. They sat in silence for a moment as traffic buzzed around them. Then he spoke. "Thank you." "For what?" "For showing up." She sipped her tea. "I always show up. You just never noticed." He swallowed hard. "I deserved that." "No," she said. "You deserved 100 other things I'll never say out loud. But that one's free." Knox sat still. No defense. No excuses. "I saw him," he finally said. "I knew the second I did. I figured. I don't know what you told him about me, but—" "I told him nothing," Malia interrupted, "because you weren't something to talk about." Knox nodded slowly. "I want to be in his life. But I know that's not my decision." "No, it's not," she said calmly. "And if you're here thinking one meeting will fix years of silence, let me be clear, it won't." "I understand." She leaned forward slightly. "You'll never meet him unless I see proof that you've changed. Not money, not press statements. Proof. Real, patient, humble proof. I'm not here to buy time. I'm here to earn it." She studied him, searching for cracks. "You start with letters," she said. "Short, simple. I'll read them. If I feel they're safe, I'll let him read one." He nodded. "No visits, no surprises, no lawyers. You move at his pace, not yours." "Understood. And if you ever weaponize your name or your guilt, this stops immediately." "I won't." She exhaled, slow and full, then stood. "That's all I came to say." He stood too. "I don't expect forgiveness." "Good," she said, walking away, "because I'm not offering it yet." The first letter arrived 5 days later. It was handwritten on thick cream paper, sealed in a plain envelope. No logo, no return address, just one word on the front in black ink, Keon. Malia sat at the dining table, staring at the envelope for nearly an hour before she opened it. She wasn't sure what she was expecting. Maybe manipulation disguised as sentiment, or some veiled attempt to insert himself. But it wasn't that. The letter was short. "Dear Keon, my name is Knox. I know you don't know me, and I don't want to confuse you. So I'll tell you one thing to start. I'm someone who should have been there from the beginning. I missed out on every first moment of your life, and that's no one's fault but mine. I don't expect anything from you. I just hope one day you'll feel comfortable reading my letters. For now, I'll tell you one thing each time I write. Today's truth. When I was a little boy, I hated math, but I loved puzzles. I used to hide under my mother's desk and build towers out of pens and erasers. That's where I learned to focus. I hear you're good at puzzles too. That makes me proud. K. Malia folded the letter carefully, pressed her lips together, and slid it into the folder she'd labeled Keon's box. She didn't let him read it yet. Not because she didn't believe it, but because she wanted to see if this man knew how to keep showing up without applause. The second letter came a week later. Dear Keon, I used to think being strong meant hiding feelings. But now I know it means taking responsibility even when you're scared. I'm scared of being a stranger to you. But I'm writing anyway. Today's truth. I once lost a chess tournament in college because I made a move too fast. I thought reacting was better than waiting. That mistake stayed with me. I've made bigger ones since. But I'm learning. K. Again, Malia read it first. Again, she said nothing. But this time, she left it on the counter for Keon to find. She didn't say it was from his father. She didn't say anything at all. She let Keon ask when he was ready. 3 days later, Keon walked into the kitchen, letter in hand. "Is this from the man we saw in New York?" he asked. Malia nodded slowly. "Yes." Keon looked at the page again. "He doesn't write like a bad guy." Malia pulled him close. "He's trying not to be." Keon didn't say anything else. But he asked her to put the letter in his backpack, just in case he wanted to read it again later. Over the next few weeks, the letters kept coming, one after another. Simple, honest, no pressure. Sometimes stories, sometimes confessions. He never asked to meet. He never pushed. He just showed up, in ink and folded paper. Malia watched it unfold like a slow sunrise, and for the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't let herself feel. Not forgiveness, but curiosity. Maybe this man was learning how to be a father, and maybe, just maybe, he was becoming someone worth knowing. It was a Sunday afternoon when Keon heard his voice again. Malia had the TV on low while folding laundry in the living room. Keon was on the floor with his puzzle pieces, quiet as usual, concentrating. A news anchor's voice filled the space. And in a rare interview, tech CEO Knox Ellington opened up about his new investment in social health initiatives. The name hit Malia like a sudden gust. She looked up, remote in hand, ready to click away. But Keon beat her to it. "Wait," he said. "That's his voice." Malia froze. Keon turned to look at her. "That's him, right?" She paused, then nodded. "Yeah." They both turned toward the screen. There he was, sharp suit, calm face, talking numbers and impact. But his tone had softened over the years, less aggressive, more measured. Keon listened, not like a child, like a boy watching something that suddenly mattered. When the segment ended, he didn't say anything right away. He just went back to his puzzle. But 5 minutes later he asked, "Was he always that serious?" Malia smiled faintly. "He was worse." Keon laughed. "He sounds kind of nervous." Malia folded another towel. "He probably was." Later that night, while brushing his teeth, Keon asked again, "What was he like when you knew him?" Malia stood by the bathroom door, confident, loud, always 10 steps ahead in business. But not when it came to feelings. He didn't know how. He didn't want to know how, she corrected gently. He thought power was enough, and when something scared him, he destroyed it before it could get close. Keon spit into the sink, then looked up at her in the mirror. "Did he destroy you?" Malia met his gaze. "No," she said. "He tried. But I'm still here." After Keon fell asleep, Malia sat on the edge of her bed and scrolled through her inbox. There it was. Another letter, this time sent digitally. It read, "Dear Keon, I saw something today that made me think of you. A child assembling a puzzle upside down. No picture, just shape. It reminded me how sometimes we're asked to build things with no guide, no color, no promise it'll make sense. I feel that way about being your father. I don't have the box top, but I still want to try." Kay, she read it twice, then forwarded it to Keon's tablet. No comments, no edits. He'd see it when he was ready. Keon was never one to rush decisions. Even as a toddler, he'd stare at 2 bowls of cereal like he was negotiating a merger. So when he quietly walked into the living room with a blank sheet of paper and said, "I want to write him back," Malia knew this wasn't a whim. She put down her coffee. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Just 1 letter." She watched his small fingers grip the pencil, the way his brows furrowed in concentration. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just about a note. This was the beginning of something she couldn't control. He wrote slowly, carefully. He didn't ask her to help. When he was done, he handed her the folded paper. "Hi, I liked the puzzle story. I don't know what to say yet, but I don't hate you. Keon." Malia stared at it for a long time, not because of the words, but because of what it meant. Keon wasn't driven by bitterness. He didn't carry the weight she'd been shielding him from. He just wanted to know. That night, after Keon was asleep, Malia scanned the letter and emailed it to Knox. No greeting, no commentary. She simply attached the file and hit send. 2 hours later, a reply arrived. "Thank you. That meant more than I know how to say. I'll answer only when he's ready for more." Malia stared at the screen. No pressure, no overreach. No "can I see him" ask. It was the first time Knox had ever kept his distance voluntarily. It felt like progress. The following week, Keon received a package. No logo, no wrapping. Just a brown box with his name handwritten in neat block letters. Inside, a custom puzzle, 1,000 pieces. When Malia flipped it over, her breath caught. It was an image of a boy and a man sitting on a bench under a tree. Both were turned away from the camera, but their shadows on the grass showed they were holding hands. Keon smiled. "He made this?" "I think so." Keon studied the box. "Can we build it together?" Malia hesitated. "With me or with him?" "With you," he said. "For now." They started on the corner pieces that afternoon. Keon worked quietly, focused. But at one point, he looked up. "Do you think he still likes puzzles?" Malia nodded. "He does. Maybe we're the same." She looked at her son, so full of grace. "No, baby. You're better." Malia had just finished her clinic's morning briefing when the email landed in her inbox. Subject line, "Request. For you, not him." Sender, Knox Ellington. She hesitated before opening it. The letters had been steady, honest, never overreaching. She had seen the shift in tone, the humility in his words. Still, she braced herself. Then she read, "Malia, I know you've done more than I ever earned by letting Keon read my words. That alone is a gift. But I'd like to ask something, not of him, of you. If you believe he's ready, if you believe I'm safe to be seen, even just once, could I meet him? No cameras, no entourage, no expectations. One meeting, wherever you say, however you set it. And if your answer is no, I'll accept it without a second word." Knox. She leaned back in her chair. There it was. The moment she knew would eventually come. That night, Keon sat on the floor, building the final corner of the puzzle Knox had sent. He'd been quiet all day, concentrating the way he did when something was on his mind. "Can I ask something?" he said without looking up. Malia folded her legs under her. "Of course. Do you think I'd like him? If I met him?" She paused. "I think you'd recognize parts of yourself in him. But liking someone takes time." Keon considered that. "Would it be weird if I wanted to meet him just once?" Malia inhaled slowly. No, it wouldn't be weird at all. 2 days passed before she responded to Knox's message. "You'll meet him. 1 hour. Public park. Sunday. No contact unless he initiates. No gifts. No pictures. Don't make this moment about your guilt. M." Knox replied within minutes. "Understood. Thank you. I'll be there." On Sunday, the park was calm. Light breeze. Late sunshine. Children laughing on swings in the distance. Malia sat with Keon on a checkered blanket under a large oak tree. She dressed him in his favorite grey hoodie and his cleanest sneakers. He clutched a Rubik's Cube in one hand, nerves dancing in his legs. "He's coming, right?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes. You're staying with me?" "Always." Knox arrived right on time, alone. He wore dark jeans, a simple crewneck sweater, and a nervous look that didn't match the man known for market takeovers. When Keon saw him, he didn't move, just stared. Knox approached slowly, stopped 5 feet away. "Hi," he said, voice gentle. Is this a good spot? Keon looked up at Malia. She nodded once. Okay, Keon said. Knox sat cross-legged on the grass. Not too close, not too confident, just present. And for the next 60 minutes, they sat under a tree, saying little, but feeling everything. The hour moved slowly, but not awkwardly. Keon didn't ask a million questions. He didn't smile much either. But he didn't walk away. That alone spoke volumes. Knox kept his voice low, his posture open. He didn't rush into anything. He commented on the birds, the wind, the colors of Keon's Rubik's Cube. He asked nothing about the past. Malia watched from a short distance, reading a book she wasn't really reading. Her eyes stayed on them. Always. She had told herself she'd leave the moment Knox crossed a line. But he didn't. If anything, he underplayed his hand. 20 minutes in, Keon finally spoke. Do you know how to solve it? He asked, holding up the cube. Knox shook his head. Nope, I've scrambled hundreds and finished none. Keon smirked. I can do it in under 2 minutes. That's faster than me by 2 minutes. Keon cracked a smile. It was small, but real. They didn't talk about family, or blood, or what was missing. They stayed on puzzles, birds, and stories about being afraid of dogs. But with 10 minutes left, Keon looked up and asked, Do you have a kid name you want me to call you? Knox froze. He glanced briefly at Malia. She didn't nod, didn't guide. Just watched. That's your choice, Knox said. I'll answer to whatever you feel is fair. Keon was quiet for a while. Then, I don't like calling you him. That feels weird. That's okay. But I'm not ready to say the other word. I understand, Knox said, voice steady. You don't have to. Keon looked away, then back. Can I just say your name? Knox nodded. Of course. Keon whispered it once. Knox. And something in the air shifted. Malia closed her book. She wasn't emotional, not yet, but her chest tightened. It wasn't a hug. It wasn't Dad, but it was a name, given freely, without pressure. That mattered more than anything. When the hour ended, Keon stood first. I'm hungry, he said, looking at Malia. We'll grab something on the way home, she replied. He looked back at Knox. Okay, bye, Knox. Knox smiled gently. Bye, Keon. Thanks for sitting with me. The boy gave a soft wave, then turned to walk off with his mother. Knox watched them disappear. He didn't chase, didn't call out. He simply stood there, hands in his jacket pockets, heart heavier than ever, but in a way that felt right. He hadn't earned Dad, but for the first time, he had earned his name. 2 weeks passed. No letters, no visits, no pressure. Knox stayed silent. Malia noticed. Not because she expected him to chase after that park meeting, but because part of her feared he might. That he'd take Keon's quiet yes and twist it into a license to show up, to insert himself again. But he didn't. And strangely, that made her relax more than any promise ever could. Keon didn't mention the meeting much. He didn't talk about Knox like he was a stranger or a father. He talked about him the way a kid remembers a movie character, curious but not attached. He wasn't as tall as I thought he'd be, Keon said one night, brushing his teeth. Malia raised a brow. You expected a giant? I don't know. You said he was big. I meant his ego, she muttered. Keon laughed, spitting into the sink. That was the most he said about it all week. At the clinic, Malia stayed busy. Keon Wellness House was in the middle of its third expansion phase. A second location in DC was under renovation, and Malia had hired 2 new regional directors. Her calendar was full of grant calls, interview requests, and strategy meetings. But every so often, her mind would drift back to that park. The way Knox had sat still, the way he let silence carry the weight. It was different. That Friday, a package arrived at the clinic. No logo, no signature, just a box addressed to Ms. M. Rowe, staff room only. Inside was a small framed photo, an original drawing by a child, signed, "Thank you for helping my brother speak for the first time." No letter attached. just the drawing. And a post-it stuck to the back. This place is changing lives. Keep going. Kay. She stood there for a while, fingers on the frame. He wasn't buying his way in. He was respecting the boundaries and showing appreciation from a distance. That night, Malia pulled out her old journal, the one she kept hidden in her sock drawer beneath old scarves and spare keys. She flipped through past entries. Some pages were smudged with tears. Others had names crossed out in thick pen lines. Then she reached a blank page. She picked up her pen, and for the first time in years, she didn't write about pain. She wrote about growth, about a man learning to be less loud, about a boy growing into himself without confusion, about a woman still healing, but no longer bleeding. She closed the book. Keon walked into the kitchen mid-morning Saturday with cereal on his lip. Can he come to the art fair? Malia blinked. What? The one next week at school. My teacher said I could invite someone else besides you. She stared at her son. You want him there? Keon shrugged. He said he liked my puzzles. I want to show him my painting too. She didn't answer immediately. She sipped her tea, then nodded. Okay, but we invite him on our time, not his. Keon smiled and went back to his cereal like he hadn't just shifted the earth. The gym smelled like paint, glue and juice boxes. Paper suns, stick figure families, and fingerprint animals covered the walls. Children ran between tables while teachers corralled them into loose lines. Parents hovered near bulletin boards, laughing softly, eyes proud and wide. Malia stood to the side in a denim jacket and soft sneakers, watching Keon bounce between his classmates and the easels. He was nervous, though he wouldn't admit it. I want it to be perfect, he had whispered to her that morning. It already is, she told him. Now, he stood in front of his painting, an abstract swirl of blue and yellow and deep, sharp orange. Why those colors? Malia had asked. Because they feel like me, he said. Blue for quiet, yellow for ideas, and orange for the questions I don't say out loud. She had kissed the top of his head. Then he surprised her. Did you tell him to come? She paused. You still want that? He nodded. But only if he stays behind everyone else. She smiled. You sure? Yeah. Knox arrived 15 minutes after it started. He stood by the back wall, hands in his pockets, looking more like a substitute teacher than a billionaire. He wore a soft grey sweater and a calm expression. No phone, no entourage, no arrogance, just eyes searching for his son. When he found him, his shoulders dropped. Not in disappointment, in relief. He didn't wave. He didn't call his name. He simply stood there and waited. Keon saw him, didn't smile, didn't hide. He walked up to his teacher and whispered something. She nodded, then, loud enough for the whole gym to hear, she said, Next, we have Keon, Rowe, who wants to introduce someone special before his presentation. Malia's heart caught in her throat. Keon turned to the group. My name's Keon, he said. And that's my mom over there. She's why I'm here. People clapped. He pointed again. And that's Knox. He's the man who sent me letters and puzzles. More claps. Keon looked back at him. I don't know what he'll be later, but today he's someone I'm not mad at. Laughter. Applause. Knox's jaw tightened. His eyes filled but didn't spill. Malia wiped a tear from her cheek before anyone could see. It wasn't a full title, but it was something. And he had earned it. After the fair, Malia walked Keon to the car. Knox followed at a respectful distance. At the curb, Keon turned to him. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me, Knox said. Keon looked at Malia. Can he come again? She met Knox's eyes, then looked at her son. We'll talk. Keon nodded and climbed into the back seat, already unzipping his coat. Malia stood by the door. Knox stayed quiet. She said, You handled that well. He smiled slightly. It wasn't my stage. No, she said. But he let you stand in the room. That's something. Knox nodded. It's everything. She looked down at her hands, then back up. We're not there yet, but I see the effort. Then I'll keep showing it. She opened her door, but paused. No letters next week, she said. Talk to him, in person, over lunch. Knox blinked. She smiled faintly. You earned a table. The cafe was small, tucked on a quiet street with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu that hadn't changed in years. Malia picked it on purpose. No reporters, no linen napkins, no crowd, just warm food and real people. She and Keon arrived early. They picked a corner booth where the window sunlight spilled across the table like it was invited. Keon fidgeted with the salt shaker, eyes scanning the door. You nervous? Malia asked. A little, he said. But not like before. You don't owe him anything, she reminded him. I know, Keon said. But I want to know what his laugh sounds like. Malia raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I've never heard it, Keon replied. And I've heard yours 1,000 times. She squeezed his hand gently. Knox arrived right on time. No driver, no assistant, just him. He wore a navy jacket over a dark t-shirt. Clean, simple. Present, he paused at the table before sitting. Hi. Keon gave a half smile. You made it. I wouldn't miss it, Knox said, settling across from them. No menus were opened yet. The waitress brought 3 waters and a warm smile. You're ready? Or need a minute? We're ready, Keon said quickly. I want pancakes. Even though it's lunch. Kid after my own heart, she said, writing it down. Malia ordered a sandwich. Knox asked for black coffee and a plate of whatever Keon was having. That made Keon grin. Just a little. The first 10 minutes were quiet. Knox asked Keon about school. Keon told him about a volcano experiment that went wrong and how a kid named Trevor blamed him when the model exploded. I didn't even touch it, Keon said, wide-eyed. Knox leaned in, mock serious. What do we learn? Keon grinned. Sit farther from Trevor. Knox laughed. Really laughed. Low, warm, unforced. Keon froze mid-sip, then smiled. There it is. Knox blinked. What? Your laugh, Keon said. It's better than I thought. Malia's lips curled, but she said nothing. The food came. Syrup dripped. Napkins piled. Keon told more stories. Knox listened without interrupting. He didn't try to impress. He didn't pitch a future. He just existed. Malia watched him closely. She wasn't softened. She was observant. But she couldn't deny what she saw. He was trying. Not for show, but from somewhere deeper than she remembered. After the meal, Keon went to the restroom. Knox sipped his coffee and looked at Malia. Thank you, he said. For what? For the chance to sit here. For not saying no. She stared at him. I almost did. I know. He looked out the window. I've spent years in rooms where people listened to me because of my money. But with you, I always had to earn every word. You never earned the right ones. I'm trying now. She nodded. You're getting closer. He looked back at her. I'm not expecting anything from you. You better not, but I'd still like to try. Malia didn't answer. But she didn't walk away either. And when Keon returned to the table, scooting in beside her, she looked between them and said, Next time, you're bringing dessert. Knox smiled. So did Keon. And just like that, next time became real. Knox had spent years walking into rooms knowing everyone would adjust their voice to match his energy. Malia never did. Not then, not now. That Sunday afternoon, as they stepped out of the cafe, Knox walked behind her and Keon, watching them move as if the world only needed 2 lanes, hers and her son's. She didn't lean toward him. She didn't offer closeness. She didn't give anything away for free. But when Keon reached for her hand, and she gave it, easily, without pausing, Knox saw something he had missed all those years ago. She wasn't soft because she bent. She was powerful because she didn't break. Later that night, he sat alone in his Manhattan loft. No music, no calls, just stillness. His assistant had sent him Malia's latest press feature, The Baltimore Woman Reshaping Pediatric Therapy. He scrolled through the article, not for the numbers, but for the words she used. They weren't corporate. They weren't self-congratulatory. They were about trust, access, compassion. Knox used to call those things PR fluff, but now he saw the power behind them. She hadn't built a brand. She had built a standard. He closed the article and opened his Photos app. A blurry picture sat at the top of his recent folder, Keon, holding up syrup-covered pancakes like they were gold. Malia had taken it without thinking. She had texted it to him after the lunch and added, "He says this was the best meal he's had all year." Probably the syrup. He had stared at that picture for hours, not because of Keon's smile, but because of the woman behind the camera. She had given him space to be present without making it about his absence. Knox typed a message. That lunch meant a lot. Not just because of him, because of you. You see things in people before they see it in themselves. I didn't understand that before. I do now. He didn't send it. He saved it as a draft, because this wasn't the moment to impress. It was the moment to prove. The next afternoon, Malia got an unexpected delivery at the clinic. Not flowers, not jewelry, just a book. The Deep End of You by Maya Russell, an old poetry book she once mentioned during a late night with Knox years ago. Tucked inside was a yellow sticky note. You said you lent this to someone who never gave it back. This copy's yours now. K, no signature, no assumptions, just a quiet gesture. She opened to a bookmarked page. The poem read, "I don't want the version of you that shows up with words. I want the one who arrives without needing them." Malia read it twice. Then, once more. She didn't text him, but she didn't throw it away either. She placed the book on her desk, right beside her son's drawing of a puzzle. 2 weeks later, Knox got an invitation he didn't expect. It wasn't from Malia. It was from Keon. A handwritten note on notebook paper, complete with spelling mistakes. "Hi, there is a father-kid science night. You can come if you want. I don't care, but it's okay if you're busy." From Keon. No pressure, no expectations, but there it was. That Friday evening, Knox stood in the hallway of Keon's school, holding a bottle of soda and a baking soda kit. He hadn't done a science project since middle school. He wore jeans. No suit, no assistant, no press. Just a man and a bag of materials he didn't know how to pronounce. When he entered the classroom, Keon was already there, eyes lighting up in surprise, then squinting as if he couldn't believe Knox actually came. "You showed up," Keon said, neutral. Knox smiled. "You invited me." They said nothing more for 10 minutes, just built a mini volcano and got glue all over the table. But halfway through, Keon turned to him and asked, "Do you know what time I was born?" Knox froze. He looked down at the vinegar in his hand, then back at his son. "No," he answered truthfully. "But I wish I did." Keon nodded slowly, like he was figuring out how to process that. Then he asked, "Did you and my mom love each other?" Knox inhaled. "I did," he said. "And I think a part of me always will. But I didn't treat her like it." Keon said nothing, but he didn't look away. He was listening. That night, Knox dropped Keon off in front of the clinic, where Malia was waiting under the streetlight. The same one she used to wait at for her late-night bus shifts. When Keon hopped out of the car and hugged his mother, she glanced at Knox and asked, "How was it?" Knox didn't answer. Keon did. "He told me the truth." She nodded and turned to her son. "You okay?" Keon looked between them, then back at her. "I didn't tell them my name was Ellington," he said. "I still say Rowe, because that's the name you gave me." Knox's chest tightened. Malia blinked once, then knelt and looked her son in the eye. "And when you're ready to change that, it'll still be your choice," she said. Keon nodded, but he whispered, "I don't want to change it. Not now, not yet." Malia stood slowly and looked at Knox, her voice calm but direct. "You heard him?" Knox nodded. "I did." That evening, Malia stood alone in her kitchen, Keon fast asleep in the next room. She opened her drawer and pulled out the poetry book again, the one Knox had sent. She reread the same lines. The one who arrives without needing words. She closed the book and looked out her window. Maybe he had finally started to arrive. The dinner invitation came quietly. No press, no staff, just a text. Knox, would you allow me to talk with you? No business. Just us. Malia didn't reply right away. She stared at the message like it was a riddle, her heart guarded by years of silence. She waited 3 days before answering. Malia. 1 hour. Public place. No expectations. She chose a quiet cafe in Brooklyn Heights, somewhere unfamiliar to them both. She brought Keon to Bernice and left her heart in the glove compartment. Knox was already seated when she arrived. No suit, no tie, just a navy sweater and the weight of everything he hadn't said in 5 years. He stood when she approached. Malia. She sat without greeting. I came to listen, not to relive. He nodded. Fair. A waitress came and left. Neither touched the menus. Knox exhaled hard. I've replayed that night in my head 100 times. Malia crossed her legs. Good. I've lived it. He winced. I thought I was protecting myself, he said. You mean your ego? He swallowed. Yes. My mother died believing every woman was a threat. My father was a con artist. He used love like a weapon. Every relationship I watched growing up was poisoned with lies and survival tactics. So when you walked in with that test, I didn't see you. I saw them. I was shaking, Malia said softly. I was terrified. And you turned that moment into a character assassination. I did, Knox admitted. I can't erase that. But I'm here to own it. All of it. She didn't blink. Knox, do you know how hard it is to carry a child while wondering if their father hates your existence? He looked down. I fainted because I wasn't eating. I wasn't eating because I couldn't afford food and tuition at the same time. And you, your voice, echoed in my head for months. Women like you. That line haunted me. I'm sorry, he said. You can't sorry your way into my life again. I know. She leaned forward. Then why ask to meet? Because Keon exists, and because I see what I missed, not just in him but in you. The words sat between them like spilled wine. Malia looked out the window. Knox, you had me. All of me. Loyalty, love, sacrifice. And you crushed it in one sentence. So if you're looking for an easy fix, you came to the wrong woman. I'm not, he said. I'm looking for truth. She raised an eyebrow. You already have the DNA test. What more truth do you need? I want to know what Keon's favorite bedtime story is. I want to know what food he hates. I want to know how he likes his waffles. Her lips parted slightly. I want to know my son, he said. Malia sat back. Then start where I started. From the ground, without entitlement. Knox nodded slowly. What does that look like? No gifts, no trips, no announcements. Just show up. Be consistent, be patient. He breathed out. Okay. She studied him. If you break his heart, I will never forgive you. I won't. I believed that once. Knox didn't flinch. He took the punch. They paid the bill in silence. Outside, the Brooklyn breeze kissed Malia's cheek as Knox opened the cafe door for her. As they walked to her car, he said, You don't have to forgive me today, but I'll be here every time you look over your shoulder. I'm not looking back, Knox. I'm watching forward. She drove away, heart steady. That conversation didn't fix anything, but it made one thing clear. Knox wasn't running this time. Over the next month, he did exactly what she asked. He showed up at Keon's school, not at dismissal, but for events. The first was the parent-child art fair. Malia watched from a distance. Knox stood beside Keon like he'd been invited. He didn't bring cameras, didn't correct his son's painting. He stood back and let Keon explain the meaning of his abstract color choices. This one's blue because it's quiet, like when Mummy reads to me, Keon said. And the yellow? Knox asked. That's for puzzles. Yellow makes me think. Malia fought back a tear. Later, when Keon looked up and asked, Are you coming next week? Knox replied, If you want me to, I will. He didn't say, I'm your dad. He didn't rush it. And for that, Malia let him return the next week. One evening, Knox knocked on Malia's door with a folder. What's that? She asked. Letters. I've been writing to him. You said everything goes through you first. Malia hesitated, then took them. That night, after Kian went to bed, she sat on her couch and read every page. Each letter was dated, written in simple language, filled with vulnerability. No manipulation, no performance. He wrote about his favorite books as a boy, his fear of thunderstorms, and how he once thought being alone made him strong until he met someone who proved him wrong. The letters didn't ask for love. They offered memories. She cried reading the fifth one, the one that said, I don't expect to be your hero, but I hope to earn your trust, one day at a time. 6 months passed. Malia let Kian meet Knox officially, at a public park with neutral ground and no assumptions. Kian ran up and stared at him closely. You look like me, he said. Knox's knees nearly buckled. I think that's a good thing, he whispered. Kian smiled. Want to see me climb? Absolutely. Malia watched them from the bench. Her guard was still up, but her heart wasn't clenched anymore. That night, Kian said, Mummy, Mr. Knox listens good. She kissed his forehead. Yes, he's learning. Knox never rushed. He came to the park once a week, then twice, then started helping with homework when Kian wanted. He never crossed lines, never touched Malia, not even a hug, until one night she stood at her front door as he was about to leave. You can come in, she said softly. Just for tea. He stepped inside. No expectations, no smirks, just gratitude. They sat on the couch, same couch where her tears once soaked the cushions. Now they talked like parents, two people raising a boy with curiosity and calm. He told her about therapy, about the layers he was peeling back. She told him about the clinic, about how she still feared failing but kept going. They didn't flirt, they exchanged truths. Their second dinner came 3 months later. No Kian, just them. A small Italian spot in Fells Point. I still don't know if I trust you, she said over gnocchi. I don't blame you, he replied. But I see you trying. He looked at her. I'm not trying, I'm becoming. She smiled faintly. Bernice said that once. She's a wise woman. Months passed again. Kian started calling him Dad by choice. It wasn't planned. It just happened. One Sunday when they were building Legos, Dad, can you pass me the red piece? Knox froze. Malia, watching from the kitchen, didn't correct him. They didn't talk about it, but they both felt it. Knox asked Malia to dinner again. This time, she didn't hesitate. At the end of the meal, he walked her to her car. I know this is fragile, he said, but I need to ask, can I hold your hand? She paused. Then she slid her fingers into his. I'm not the girl you broke, she whispered. I know, he said. You're the woman I admire. 2 years after that first public park meeting, they stood at a quiet ceremony with Kian holding both their hands. Malia wore no veil. Her curls were free. Her smile was steady. Knox didn't just say vows. He wept through them. Not because she said yes, but because she made him earn it. Because pain taught him what pride never could. Have you ever made someone prove they were worthy of a second chance? If you've ever chosen self-respect over sweet words, hit that like button. Comment earned, not given if you believe love should come with growth. And if this story touched your heart, subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, because we don't just tell stories, we deliver life lessons. Knox Ellington sat in his penthouse, staring at the wall. The city lights danced outside his windows, but they no longer impressed him. His jaw clenched as he gripped the envelope in his hand, the DNA result. 99.9% certainty. Kian was his son, his blood. His eyes stung, but no tears came. Knox wasn't the type to cry easily. But this was different. He had missed the first time his son opened his eyes, missed his first laugh, first steps, first fever, first words. Knox didn't even know if Keon had ever said Dada to anyone. The weight of 5 lost years fell on him like bricks, and for once in his life he had no one to blame but himself. He opened his phone and stared at Malia's number. There were 100 things he wanted to say, but he only typed 2 words. "I'm sorry." She didn't reply. The silence cut deeper than a slap. He had once accused her of using a fake test to manipulate him. Now she was the one protecting his son from him. And maybe she was right too. 2 weeks passed before he saw Keon again. Malia had agreed to meet at a quiet public park in Brooklyn. No press, no drama, just grass, benches, and the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. Knox arrived early. He wore jeans and a hoodie. No driver, no assistant, just him. He sat on a bench, palms sweating. Then he saw them, Malia walking toward him with a little boy holding her hand. Keon wore a blue jacket, curly hair bouncing with each step. He looked up at Malia and said something that made her smile. That smile knocked the breath from Knox's lungs. When they reached the bench, Malia nodded politely. "Keon," she said softly, "this is Mr. Knox." Keon looked up, eyes wide. "You look like me," he said with a curious grin. Knox's heart split open. "Yeah," he whispered, kneeling to eye level. "I do." Keon tilted his head. "Do you like puzzles?" Knox laughed gently. "I love puzzles." Keon smiled and climbed onto the bench beside him, opening a crumpled paper filled with drawings and shapes. They spent the next hour solving a maze together. Malia watched from a distance, arms folded, expression unreadable. She wasn't sure what scared her more, how easily Keon had taken to him, or how tender Knox had become. Later that week, Knox stood outside Malia's clinic. He didn't go inside. Instead, he left a thick envelope with the receptionist. Inside, a donation large enough to cover 2 years of operating costs. No note, no signature, just action. Malia found it that evening. She knew exactly who it was from. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. Over the next 3 months, Knox showed up, but never pushed. He went to Keon's art fair, cheered at his soccer games. He even attended a parent workshop Malia hosted, sitting in the back like a nervous student. He asked smart questions, never interrupted. He never posted about Keon, never used him to soften his image. And when Keon asked him, "Do I have to call you Daddy now?" Knox said, "Only if you want to, little man." Keon had smiled and said, "I'll think about it." Malia noticed. She also noticed something else. Knox had changed. Not overnight, but intentionally. He never brought up the past to justify himself. He didn't demand forgiveness. He didn't guilt-trip her. He moved like a man who knew he had destroyed something and was willing to build brick by brick to restore what he could. Still, she kept her walls up. Until the night he texted, "Can we talk?" She met him at a quiet cafe. He was already seated, 2 mugs of tea between them. "No pressure," he said as she sat. "I just wanted to thank you for letting me see him." Malia nodded, guarded. "You're doing a phenomenal job," he added. "He's amazing." She stared at him. "Why now, Knox?" He didn't dodge. "Because I couldn't handle being the man I was. But I can't change that. I can only show you who I'm trying to be now." Malia studied him. The sharp suit was gone. He looked tired. "Human, you broke me," she said, voice low. "I had nothing, and you turned your back like I was disposable. I know. I was alone, pregnant, with no support. And every time I looked at that child I saw you. But I also saw someone I couldn't let down." He looked down at the table. "You shouldn't have had to do it alone." "I did. And now you think you can just walk in and rewrite the past?" "No," he said. "I'm not trying to fix the past. I'm just trying not to miss the future." Malia looked away, her throat tightening. Knox reached into his coat pocket and slid a small notebook across the table. "What's this?" "Letters," he said. "I've been writing to him since I found out. I didn't send them. I didn't want to overstep. But maybe you can give them to him when you think he's ready." Malia opened the notebook. The first page read, "To the son I never knew I had. I missed your first breath. I won't miss the rest." She didn't speak again that night. But she didn't return the notebook either. And that was the first time she left a meeting with him. Without anger. 3 months later, Keon called Nox's dad for the first time. They were building a Lego set at Malia's apartment. Malia had stepped out to take a call. "Dad, can we build a rocket ship next?" Keon asked. Nox froze. "What did you call me?" Keon looked up. "Dad, that's okay, right?" Nox swallowed. "Yeah, little man. That's more than okay." When Malia walked back in, she found Nox wiping his eyes, smiling at her son like he held the entire universe in his hands. She paused at the doorway. Her heart didn't break. It healed a little. And she didn't stop it. Malia stood at the glass window of her wellness center, arms crossed, watching Nox through the tinted pane. He was sitting in the lobby, Keon asleep against his shoulder, a children's book in his lap. His hand rested on their son's back, with a kind of stillness that used to feel foreign to him. But now, it looked natural. She turned away from the window and leaned against the wall. She had spent years raising Keon with silence as her strength. She didn't post complaints, didn't text bitter paragraphs. She grieved and rebuilt, in private. Nox was never blocked, but he was never chased. He was left with space, and what he did with it would speak louder than any argument ever could. When he called 3 weeks later and asked if she'd join him for dinner, she hesitated. She wasn't scared, just careful. "Is this dinner for business?" she asked. "No," he replied. "It's for regret, reflection, and respect." She agreed, but only after he suggested a public place halfway between his world and hers. A quiet rooftop restaurant in Baltimore with no press, no flashy valet line, no designer distractions. He was already seated when she arrived. Cream blouse, high-waisted slacks. He stood the moment he saw her, pulling her chair out like a gentleman raised right. The gesture surprised her. "You look peaceful," he said. "I earned it," she replied. He smiled. "Yes, you did." They ate, slowly. The city lit up beneath them. But the sparkle between them had shifted. This wasn't lust. It was weight. It was time. And a silent understanding that neither of them was the same. "I owe you more than apologies," Nox said. "But I want to start with the deepest one." She didn't interrupt. "I was raised by a man who taught me money meant power, and women were always after it, and I hated that part of him. But I became it." Malia nodded slowly. "You did. I didn't trust anyone. And the moment I thought you were trying to trap me, I went cold. That night, I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Of needing you, of loving you, of losing control." She exhaled, her voice low. "You could have said that. But instead, you called me desperate. I've thought about that every day since I saw your son's eyes." She looked up, eyes shining but not crying. "My son." He swallowed. "Yes, your son. But he's also yours," she added carefully. "Now. Because you've shown up." He blinked. Her words were permission. Not forgiveness, but progress. That summer, Keon spent weekends with Nox. They went to museums, built puzzles, baked disastrous cupcakes. Nox read parenting books. He even joined a fatherhood group in Harlem, quietly. Malia never asked him to, but she watched. When Keon fell and scraped his knee, Nox held him through the sobs. When Keon got an award in school, Nox sent flowers to both Keon and Malia. When Keon had a nightmare, Nox stayed up the whole night texting Malia, just to make sure he handled it right. He was learning. One Sunday, Nox invited Malia and Keon to a charity gala for children's mental health. "I'd like you both by my side," he said. Malia raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" "Photos, headlines, eyes. I'm not hiding anymore," he said. "Not you, not him." She looked at him, lips pressed, then nodded. "Then let's go as a team." For Keon, at the gala, Malia wore deep navy. Her curls framed her face like a crown. Keon wore a mini tux and carried a tiny clipboard, pretending to take attendance. Knox stayed by their side the entire night. When reporters asked who the boy was, Knox answered without flinching, "My son." The cameras flashed, but the moment that mattered most wasn't caught on camera. It was when Keon whispered to Malia, "I like it when he says that." After the gala, Knox walked Malia to her car. "I know we started with fire," he said, "but I'm not rushing anything. I just want the chance to keep showing you the man I should have been." Malia tilted her head. "Do you love me, Knox?" He didn't blink. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you never needed me to become whole. You just gave me space to realize I wasn't." She didn't kiss him, but she let her hand stay in his for 5 seconds longer than necessary. That was more than enough. Weeks passed, then months. Every time he asked her out, she said no, not out of bitterness, but because she wanted to be sure he wasn't mistaking guilt for romance. Finally, one rainy Thursday she called him. "You're consistent," she said. "I'm trying. I see it." Silence. "Come over," she added. He did. She didn't dress up. She didn't light candles. They ate leftovers at the kitchen counter while Keon played in the living room. Later, when Keon was asleep, Knox stood to leave. "You don't have to," she whispered. He froze. "You mean?" "I mean you don't have to run from this anymore." He stepped closer. She didn't flinch. Their kiss was slow. No hunger, just memory and softness. He kissed her forehead afterward and held her like he never wanted to leave again. By the time Keon turned 6, he called Knox's dad without hesitation, and one fall evening, after dinner at a quiet restaurant, Knox handed Malia a small box. She shook her head. "I'm not ready," she said gently. Knox smiled. "That's okay. I'm just giving you the choice I took away years ago." She opened the box at home. It wasn't a ring. It was a key to his brownstone in Harlem, along with a handwritten note. "You don't have to say yes. You don't have to move in. But you'll always have a space in my home. If not for you, then for the boy who made me a man." Malia pressed the key to her chest, not because she needed it, but because this time it came with no strings, no expectations, no pressure, just love, the kind that showed up, the kind that stayed. The morning was quiet in Baltimore. Fall had kissed the trees golden, and the city felt like it exhaled overnight. Malia stood at the window of her wellness center, sipping from a ceramic mug Keon had painted. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced over. "Knox, he asked if I could pick him up today. I'd like to, if you're okay with that." She smiled and typed back, "Malia, yes." "He's yours too." That sentence didn't sting anymore. It healed. Keon had a school recital that evening. Malia arrived early and waited outside the auditorium. She wore a grey coat, her curls swept into a simple bun. She wasn't dressed to impress. She was dressed as herself. Knox showed up on time. No flash, no driver, just a quiet walk from his black SUV, holding Keon's little backpack. "Thanks for letting me bring him," he said. Malia nodded. "You're his father. Still feels like a privilege," he added. That struck her. He meant it. Inside the school, Keon stood in a neat row with other first graders, singing about planets and space and dreams. He kept glancing at his parents in the front row, one on the left, one on the right. They clapped hard when he finished. Afterward, Knox leaned down and whispered something in Keon's ear. The boy laughed and threw himself into his dad's arms. "I told you, I'm the best planet." Malia laughed too. "You orbit all of us, kid." They walked out together. Knox opened Malia's car door before she could touch the handle. She looked at him. "You don't have to do that. I know. But I want to." The next day, Malia received a package. No label, no sender, just a cream box and a silver ribbon. Inside was a framed photo of Keon, taken candidly at the school recital. Underneath, a small note. "For the woman who made stars out of struggle. K." She stared at it, lips pressed, heart loud in her chest. 3 weeks later, she visited Harlem, not to Knox's office, but to the brownstone. She used the key for the first time. Keon ran ahead, tossing his coat onto the floor like he lived there, because in many ways, he did now. Knox was cooking, or trying to. "Why does this smell like panic?" she teased. He turned, flour on his shirt. "Because it is," she smirked. "Relax, I've seen worse." He looked at her, flour and all. "You still love me?" She blinked, then nodded. Yes. He didn't kiss her. He just said, "I know I hurt you. I want to give you more than a life. I want to give you peace." "You already started," she replied. Thanksgiving came. They hosted at the brownstone. No PR team, no influencers. Just Malia's aunt, Keon, 2 of Knox's reformed frat brothers, and way too much stuffing. That night, when Keon had fallen asleep between 2 couch cushions, Malia stood by the window. Knox came up behind her. "You look like you're waiting for something," he said. "I'm not," she replied. "I've got everything I need." He exhaled. "Me too." And then he got down on one knee. Malia froze. "Don't." He looked up. "Don't what?" "Don't propose just because it's the next step. I don't need a ring to prove I matter." He nodded, still kneeling. "Then let this be about choice. I don't want to complete you. I want to honor you." Silence. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Okay," she whispered. "Ask me then." They didn't plan a wedding for show. No press release. No rooftop spectacle. Just an outdoor ceremony in a garden behind her center. Kids from the clinic helped decorate. Keon carried the rings. Her aunt walked her down the aisle. Malia wore cream again, but this time not for armor. This time for joy. Knox waited with steady hands. When the officiant asked if she accepted this man, she laughed softly. "I already did." And when he kissed her, the applause wasn't just noise. It was a storm of survival, of years reclaimed, of love rebuilt. That night, they sat on their porch in silence. Keon had fallen asleep between them again, mouth slightly open, clutching a toy spaceship. Knox held Malia's hand. She turned to him. "You didn't save me, Knox." "I know," he replied. "You saved yourself." She smiled. "But you did meet me at the finish line." "No," he said, brushing her hair back. "I ran until I earned a place next to you." And in that moment, under the soft hum of Baltimore streetlights, they didn't talk about the past. They just watched the stars above, stars she'd created out of silence, tears, and strength. And now, she wore a ring. Not for validation, but because she knew she didn't need one, which is exactly why it fits so perfectly. It started at a charity dinner in Manhattan. Knox and Malia stood side by side as keynote speakers. The room brimmed with polished suits and practiced smiles, many of whom had doubted Malia when her center launched. Now they clapped politely. But one voice wasn't clapping. It was a whispered comment from someone at table 4, a hedge fund manager's wife, too buzzed to keep her filter on. "Isn't that the girl who faked a pregnancy for a payout? And now the son's the ticket." Malia heard it, barely, but enough. She didn't flinch. Knox did. He leaned into the mic once their speech ended. "I want to say something off script," Knox said. The room went quiet. "I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but the biggest one was assuming a woman like Malia Rowe needed to lie to earn love or stability." He glanced toward table 4. "She didn't need to trap me. I was the fool who let fear drive her away. She raised our son alone, with no handouts, no name to shield her, and no one clapping. Just her. And him." Malia felt her throat tighten. Knox wasn't done. "So the next time you think to whisper that she faked a test or used a child, just know he's not a mistake. He's the reason I became a man." Applause. Slow at first, then rising. Malia took his hand and squeezed it once. "Thank you," she whispered. Later that night, in the car, she sat quiet. Knox watched her from the driver's seat. "You okay?" She nodded. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how fast people forget where they came from. I used to be invisible to that room. He reached for her hand. "You'll never be invisible again." Kian was asleep when they returned. His babysitter said he had insisted on reading a book to her before bed, explaining each character like a professor. "He's special," she said before leaving. Malia looked at her son in bed, his curls messy, a smudge of peanut butter on his cheek. She didn't wipe it. She smiled instead. Weeks later, Malia and Kian were at a park in D.C. when they ran into Knox's former college friend, Desmond. He hadn't seen Kian before. "That's him?" Desmond asked, squinting. Malia nodded. Desmond chuckled, looking at the boy. "He doesn't look like an accident after all." Malia's jaw tensed. She stepped closer. "Don't you ever call him that again." Desmond looked confused. Malia kept her voice low and firm. "Kian isn't an accident. He wasn't a trap. He wasn't a phase. He's a blessing I carried through shame, rejection, hunger, and hope." Desmond raised his hands in surrender. "Didn't mean anything by it. That's the problem," she said. "You never do." "But words matter. He matters." Kian tugged on her hand. "Mummy, who's that?" "No one," she said, walking away. "Just someone who doesn't know how to speak to royalty." That night, Knox called. Malia didn't tell him what happened. She didn't want his rage. She wanted to protect Kian's peace. But when she told her aunt, the woman didn't hold back. "They'll always try to make him feel small to justify their own comfort," she said. "But you raised a king. Don't ever let him forget it." Knox came home early the next day with something wrapped in black velvet. "What's that?" Malia asked. "A gift," he said, handing it to Kian. Kian unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a slim, polished box. He opened it. A gold bracelet. Light, but sturdy, etched with 3 words, "Never an error." Kian blinked up at his dad. "What's this for?" Knox knelt. "Because I want you to always remember, you weren't a surprise. You were a plan bigger than I could see at the time." Malia turned away briefly, blinking fast. They framed the bracelet box later. Kian wore it only on special days. Not for style, for strength. And as he grew older, Malia watched how he walked, head high, back straight. He didn't know the whispers behind his mom's back, but he walked like he silenced them anyway. At a parent-teacher meeting, one of the educators said something that lingered. "Kian isn't just brilliant, he's emotionally intelligent. He listens. He doesn't dominate. But when he speaks, people lean in." Malia smiled. That was Knox. But it was her too. That evening, while closing up her wellness center, she found a note slipped under her office door. It was from a young mother. "I used to think being a single mom meant I failed, but then I saw how you moved, with grace, without apology. I see you. Thank you." Malia folded the note slowly, and for the first time in a long time, she let herself cry. Not out of pain, but because she realized her story had become someone else's survival guide. It was pouring in Baltimore, not a soft drizzle. Heavy, unrelenting rain that soaked clothes and turned sidewalks into rivers. Malia's wellness center had just closed. Staff were gone. Kian was with her aunt. The streetlights flickered like they were tired. She turned the lock, umbrella in hand, and stopped. There was a car parked across the street. Sleek, familiar. Knox Ellington. He was out of the car, leaning against the passenger side. No umbrella, no hat, soaked in silence. Malia didn't move. She could have walked to her own car, pretended not to see him, but she didn't. She crossed the street slowly. "Knox," she said, voice even. He looked up. "You still say my name like you own it." She raised a brow. "What are you doing here?" "I didn't call first because I didn't want to give you a reason to say no." She folded her arms. "That's not how consent works." He nodded, ashamed. "You're right. I'm sorry." Silence hung. The rain didn't let up. "I needed to say something in person," he said. "And I needed you to see my face when I said it." "Then say it." "I'm proud of you, Malia." She blinked. That wasn't what she expected. He continued. "Not just for the clinic, or Kian, but for walking away when it hurt, for not calling me even when you were scared, for raising him into someone who knows his worth." Her guard lowered slightly. "You didn't have to forgive me," he added, "but you still let me earn back space in his life." Malia's jaw tightened. "Don't romanticize my boundaries. I did that for him." "I know," Knox said, "but it healed me too." He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small journal. "What's that?" "A letter. One I wrote after I read Keon's first note to me. The one where he said, 'Thanks for being kind to my mom now.'" Malia swallowed. "I started journaling after that," Knox said, "writing to the boy I wasn't around to raise, and to the woman I didn't deserve." He handed her the journal. It was weather-worn, soaked at the edges. Malia held it like something sacred. "I'm not asking you to read it now," Knox said, "but if you ever wonder how much you changed me, it's in there." They stood for a long moment, rain still falling. "You're shivering," she said. "I'll be fine." "No, you won't," she said flatly. "You're a billionaire in the rain. That's not poetic, it's dumb." He chuckled. She exhaled. "Come inside." They sat across from each other in the center's quiet waiting room. Rain tapped the windows like a memory. Malia handed him a towel. He dried his hair. She hadn't opened the journal. "I'm not the same man you met at that hotel," Knox said. "I know," she replied. "I see you now, all of you. Not just the body I wanted, or the comfort I leaned on. I see the woman who built something from nothing, who raised a boy into a mirror of excellence. You don't have to flatter me. It's not flattery if it's true." She looked at him, really looked. There were creases near his eyes now, softer lines, a humility that wasn't there before. "Do you still love me?" he asked. Malia didn't blink. "Yes," she said. "But love without safety isn't enough." He nodded. "I'll wait." The next morning she read the journal, cover to cover. It was raw, honest, ugly in places, but human. Knox had written about therapy, about reconciling with his estranged sister, about learning that trust had to be earned, not demanded. And there was a page that read, "The man I am now would have believed her." And that's the part that breaks me. Malia closed the journal, hand on her heart. 3 weeks later, Knox invited her to a poetry night in Harlem. She almost didn't go, but her aunt nudged her. "You waited for a man who never came back. This one's been standing in the rain. Go." So she went. Knox didn't touch her hand that night, didn't lean in too close. He listened, laughed, watched her like she was the only light in a room filled with candles. And Malia didn't flinch. She relaxed. Afterward, on the walk back, he said, "Can I tell you a secret?" "Sure. I used to hate poetry." She laughed. "Used to? Now I like it, because sometimes it's the only thing that tells the truth gently." Malia paused. "You're different." Knox shrugged. "Healing looks good on me." They kissed that night, not out of lust, out of memory, out of time past and time wasted and time fought for. It wasn't a spark. It was a slow burn. And Malia didn't apologize for wanting it. That weekend, Keon asked, "Is Daddy coming over again?" She smiled. "Why?" "Because he laughs at my jokes. Even the weird ones." Malia bent down. "Does that make you happy?" "Yes." "Then I'll think about it." Knox didn't push. Malia noticed. He cooked for them on Sundays, played chess with Keon, watched movies with them on the couch, sometimes falling asleep mid-scene. One night, as Keon snored between them, Knox whispered, "I want this. All of it." She whispered back, "Then keep showing up." He did, and eventually she let him stay the night. Then weekends. Then she gave him a drawer, a toothbrush, a key. The Baltimore sun cast long golden shadows across the park, giving the afternoon a slow, sacred stillness. Malia sat on a bench with a book open on her lap, but her eyes weren't reading. They were watching Keon, who was crouched by a patch of dirt, trying to build a small city out of rocks, twigs, and leaves. She admired how focused he was, how his imagination had always been his escape, his joy, his strength. She glanced at her phone. 4:57 p.m. Knox was late. She sighed and stood, brushing imaginary crumbs from her jeans. She hated that she was nervous, hated that she still expected him to disappoint her, even after months of steady effort. He hadn't missed a school event in 5 months. He'd shown up to dentist, appointments, Saturday library runs, even a stomach flu that had her and Keon trading turns over a bowl. But this was different. Today, Keon would be alone with him for the first time. Knox had asked a week ago, cautiously, "Would you trust me to take him for the afternoon? Just the two of us?" She hadn't answered immediately. She had stared out her clinic window for a long minute, weighing everything. The years of silence, the letters, the art fairs, the slow way Keon had opened up to him. She finally said, "He can decide." Keon had nodded when she asked, not with excitement, but with a thoughtful, quiet yes. So, here they were. When Knox appeared at the park gate, Malia saw him before Keon did. He wore jeans and a white t-shirt. Simple, but she could see the effort. No luxury logos. No flashy car parked along the curb. Just a man walking. He looked nervous. "Hey," he said as he approached. Malia closed her book. "You're late. Traffic from the airport. I landed an hour ago." She raised an eyebrow. "You flew in today?" He nodded. "Had to be in Seattle yesterday, but I told you I'd be here, so I am." She didn't respond. Not directly. Instead, she turned to her son. "Keon, your dad is here." Keon looked up. He studied Knox quietly, then stood and brushed dirt from his hands. "Hi," Keon said, voice soft. "Hi, buddy," Knox said, crouching to eye level. "I brought those puzzle kits you liked. Want to go try one?" Keon nodded, then looked at Malia. She crouched to his level too. "I'll be right here when you're done, okay?" He hugged her waist without words, then took Knox's hand. Malia watched them walk toward the other side of the park, where picnic tables sat under a wide maple tree. Her heart pounded against her ribs, not out of fear, but out of something that looked a lot like hope. The picnic table was splattered with faded paint and snack crumbs, but to Keon, it might as well have been a workshop. Knox laid out the puzzle pieces, animals, vehicles, some three-dimensional shapes. "You remember these?" he asked. Keon nodded. "You sent me the dinosaur one, and the robot after you finished it." Keon started sorting pieces. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. His mind was already occupied. Knox watched, amazed. "You have a method, huh?" Keon shrugged. "Edges first. Then the center." They worked together in silence. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Finally, Keon spoke. "Why didn't you come when I was a baby?" The question hit Knox like a hammer to the chest. He looked up, saw those same dark eyes staring into his. Honest, brave. "I didn't know you were real," Knox said. "Mom said you were mad at her." Knox nodded slowly. "I was, but not because of you. I was wrong. I didn't listen. I thought things that weren't true, and because of that, I missed a lot." Keon tilted his head. "Did you say sorry to your mom?" "Yes, but not enough." Keon placed another puzzle piece. "She doesn't like liars." Knox chuckled softly. "Neither do I. She's right to be careful." Keon looked up again. "Are you going to leave again?" Knox shook his head. "No, never again." They finished the puzzle. A tiger stood on its hind legs, completed in orange and black foam. Keon smiled. So did Knox. From her bench, Malia watched it all unfold. The careful movements, the way Knox waited for Keon to speak, never pushing. She couldn't hear their words, but she saw everything. A breeze carried laughter from a nearby swing set. Malia leaned back, closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but peace. That evening, Knox walked them both to Malia's car. Keon jumped into the back seat and started playing with his tablet. Knox stood by the driver's side, hesitant. "He asked hard questions today," Knox said. Malia nodded. "He deserves answers." "I know. And I want to be the kind of man who gives them." Every time she met his eyes, they were softer, not just because he loved his son, but because he had started loving the truth. "You're getting there," she said. "Can I call tomorrow?" She nodded. Knox stepped back as she got into the car. Keon rolled down his window. "Bye, Dad." Knox blinked. "Say that again." Keon giggled. "Bye, Dad." Knox exhaled sharply. He waved, smiling. As the car pulled away, he stood still, tears in his eyes. The name he thought he'd never earn had finally been spoken. "Dad." Back at his apartment, Knox opened his laptop. His assistant had sent through an updated calendar. Meetings, investor calls, a conference in Munich. He deleted them all. He opened a new tab. Elementary schools in Baltimore. He wasn't going to miss another moment. This wasn't about proving anything to Malia anymore. This was about becoming the man his son believed in, and for once in his life, that felt like the only title he needed to chase. Knox arrived without announcement, dressed down in a Henley and dark jeans. No fanfare, no car service, just a man walking. Malia turned when she felt his presence. "You always show up when it's quiet," she said. "I don't want to make noise anymore," he replied, stepping beside her. She glanced at him. "Then what do you want?" Knox exhaled slowly. "I want to show you I've changed, not with flowers, not with promises, with time." "You're already here," she replied. "And time has passed." "So what now?" He pulled a small, folded piece of paper from his back pocket and handed it to her. "I stepped down from the chair of Ellington Tech's board last week." Her eyes widened. "What?" "They offered me more control in exchange for silence about a failed acquisition." I said no, told them I wanted to focus on real impact, on building something smaller, but more honest. Malia read the statement, his official resignation letter. It was short, direct, and unflinching. "Why are you giving me this?" she asked. "Because the first time I lost you, it was because I thought power made me strong. Now I know better. And if I ever get the chance to build something with you, I want it to be from who I am, not what I own." She nodded slowly. "That's a start." Below them, Keon ran through the crowd of kids with a paper airplane. Knox watched his son, a soft smile tugging at his lips. "He's incredible," he said. "Yes, he is. He talks about you a lot," Knox added. "Told me you still cut the crust off his sandwiches because he says you care about the edges." Malia chuckled. "He pays attention. I want to earn his trust, and yours, not just as a father, as a man." She looked at him, steady and unmoved by flattery. "That takes more than rooftop speeches." "I know," he said. Later that night, Knox stayed to help clean up after the event. No one told him to. He stacked chairs, wiped down tables, and helped Keon carry supplies to the storage closet. Malia watched from a distance. She didn't speak, but her silence wasn't dismissive this time. It was watchful. The next morning, Malia took Keon to his favorite Saturday pancake spot. Halfway through their meal, Keon looked up and said, "Can we invite Dad next time?" Malia paused. "Why?" "Because he smiles more now, and he listens." That was all. Simple, honest, like children often are. That night, she texted Knox next Saturday, 10 a.m. "You bring the juice." Knox didn't reply with emojis or a string of messages. He sent one word, "Understood." The following week, they ate pancakes together. No awkward silences, just conversation, laughter, and gentle corrections when Keon chewed with his mouth open. 2 months passed. Then 3. Malia noticed how Knox adjusted to their rhythm without overpowering it. He didn't try to impress Keon with money. He showed up for the small things: school pickups, library days, dentist appointments. One day, Keon scraped his knee at the park. Knox was the one who carried him to the car, whispering calming words and wiping his tears with the corner of his sleeve. Malia saw it happen and didn't intervene. She didn't need to. He handled it. That night, Keon called Knox Dad without being prompted. Knox stepped outside after putting Keon to bed and found Malia on the porch. "He called me Dad," he said, voice thick. She nodded. "He's been wanting to. I thought I'd cry, but instead I feel grounded. Because that word holds weight." He turned to her. "So does your presence." Their eyes met, the silence no longer tense. It held space for understanding. "Are we?" he began. "Not yet," she said, "but closer." In the following weeks, they co-hosted a wellness fundraiser for the clinic. Malia handled the programming and guest list. Knox secured silent donors and tech sponsorships. The event was a success, but more than that, it was harmonious. During the final speech, Malia took the mic. "I started this center with no investors, just a dream, a baby, and bus passes. I never wanted pity, I wanted purpose, and I'm proud to say this place runs on both." The crowd applauded. "And if you're wondering who the little boy in the back is with a bow tie and sticky fingers, that's Keon. He's the reason this place exists. And now, he has a father who chooses him daily." The room turned to Knox. He didn't stand. He didn't wave. He placed his hand over his heart and nodded. Later, Malia found him standing outside with Keon on his shoulders. She smiled. "You didn't run this time. I've got nowhere else to be." "Then stay." She didn't say more, but her hand reached out and touched his. They stood there, man, woman, child. No headlines, no boardrooms, just healing, trust, and a slow-burning love, ready for its next chapter. Knox waited outside her office, seated beside a small boy with curls that matched his. Keon, now 7, held his sketchpad, drawing something in careful strokes. Knox looked over. "What are you working on, champ?" Keon held it up. "It's a puzzle robot. It puts people back together." Knox's throat tightened. He looked at Malia's door, then back at his son. "You know, sometimes people fall apart first, but then they build something better." Keon smiled and nodded, still coloring. Malia stepped out just then, her eyes softening at the sight. "He okay with you picking him up today?" Knox stood. "Yeah. I cleared the afternoon. We're going to the aquarium. He said he wants to see jellyfish." "Jellyfish and robots in 1 week," she said, brushing her hand along Keon's hair. "You two are going to wear each other out." "We'll manage," Knox said, leaning in with a small private smile. It had been over 2 years since Malia first walked back into Knox's boardroom. Since then, they'd rebuilt slowly, not just as CO parents, but as partners. She'd made him earn every inch, not with grand gestures, but consistency, growth, presence. Their marriage was small, just 30 people under a grove of magnolia trees in Georgia. No headlines, no press. Malia's aunt officiated. Keon gave her away and stood proudly beside them. There was no fairy tale, no glass slipper, only 2 people choosing each other, eyes wide open. Knox walked them to the car, watching Keon buckle himself in. "He insists on doing everything himself now." Malia nodded. "He's your kid. Stubborn, smart, wants control. And he's yours, gentle, focused, fierce when he needs to be." They stood for a second. The past no longer loomed between them, but it hadn't vanished either. It had simply been processed, honored, transformed. "Do you ever wonder," Knox said, "what would have happened if I hadn't said those awful things that night?" Malia glanced toward the street. "Sometimes. But then I remember, if you hadn't hurt me, I might never have found out how strong I am, or how much I could give without breaking." He took her hand. "I'm proud of who you became." She looked up. "I'm proud of who you're becoming." Later that evening, while Keon snored in his room, Knox sat by the window of their home, watching the city lights. He pulled out the leather-bound journal Malia gave him after their wedding. Inside were sketches from Keon, clippings from their clinic's first franchise opening, and letters Malia had written to herself, one for every year she raised Keon alone. He read the one labeled, "Year 3. I'm tired, but I'm not empty. Every laugh Keon gives me fills the spaces where grief tried to nest. If he asks about his father one day, I'll tell him the truth. Not just the mistakes, but the man I once believed in, and maybe still do. Knox closed the book and pressed it to his chest. Malia joined him. Reading the archives again? Yeah. Still afraid? She teased gently. He shook his head. No. Just grateful. They leaned into each other, no need for more words. The story they had lived wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And through pain, growth, and love, they had built a family. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and share your thoughts. What part of Malia's journey inspired you the most? Subscribe to Mr. Charles. Stories for more powerful, emotional storytelling. Because sometimes, the people who break us also teach us how to rebuild better.